is really education. People are so ingrained about thinking about a traditional way to treat data.
You want to make sure that you do have enough coverage, and that like it's like that pyramid that you need to build out to make sure that there's like you're spreading out as employees. There are security champions everywhere, so have some ratio too.
And we really help large enterprise business deal with different data security, data privacy obligations, requirements.
Like starting with encryption of sensitive data, classifying the data based on its sensitivity, who has, what are the access controls that you have in place for that.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our new Risk Management Show podcast episode. Today we have a panel of experts, and we are going to discuss the topic of insider threats, data protection, and insider risk prevention. So our guests today are Rahul Kannan, President and CEO at Securin, and Anthony Cammarano, Global VP of Security, Privacy, and Strategy at Protegrity. So welcome, Rahul and Anthony. Welcome to our Risk Management Show podcast today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Boris.
Thank you again. So maybe before we start diving into this topic, could you please introduce yourself, what you did, and how have you been doing what you do, and what guys are you kind of busy at this time? So Rahul, please go ahead first.
So thanks, Boris, for having me on the show. Excited to also hear Anthony's perspectives on these topics as well. So my role is Chief Operating Officer here at Securin Inc. So what Securin does is we are what we call as a continuous threat exposure management company. So proactively identifying risks and vulnerabilities before bad stuff happens, right? And we're focused on a few things. So one is giving full visibility to our customers about their known and unknown assets. So what really is your threat surface? What is your true attack surface, right? Giving visibility to that. The second thing we do is we help customers drive operational efficiencies. And Anthony probably talks about this. He probably thinks about MTTR all the time. How do you remediate? Like, how do you close as many risks as possible, right? So we do the operational efficiencies by doing two things. One is we help customers focus on risks that matter. Our AI ML model help prioritize risks and really tell the infosec teams and the IT teams that these are the risks that really matter, focus on remediating them, right? So reducing the time to remediate those risks, focusing on a smaller set of risks, we drive efficiencies that way. We also drive efficiencies by integrating with different systems, be it ingesting data from multiple systems or with their ticketing systems to make sure that things flow through. So we're driving operational efficiencies that way. And risk reduction is the third piece, right? So we look at us as an early warning system. So our algorithms on average detect KEVs before, 60 days before CISA identifies them as a KEV. So that's we're an early warning signal. So that's what Securin does. And my role is essentially to like anything customer facing, right? I own the marketing, I own the sales, I own customer success, I own partnership alliances. But my main focus is how do we help drive value to our customers, right? What are the things that they care about? What are the things they worry about? And how do we actually deliver those tangible outcomes, the things that we spoke about, right? Visibility of asset, drive operational efficiencies, drive risk reduction, keep their borders safe. How do we kind of help deliver that value to our customers day in, day out? That's what I'm focused on.
Mm-hmm. All right. Anthony, please go ahead.
Thank you. And again, also, thank you very much for having me on here. Excited to learn a little bit and hopefully contribute a little bit. So I've been in technology all of my career, over 25 years, 15 of that in the cyber space. Ran host and virtual operating system cyber, as well as data security, cybersecurity for large enterprise financial. And then actually, as a customer of Protegrity, I came over and so Protegrity is a data security and privacy platform company. And, we really help large enterprise business deal with different data security, data privacy obligations, requirements, enablement. So things like, cloud modernization, data monetization, and different maybe geopolitical or privacy obligations that have been coming up. So I'm excited to apply some of this. My role within Protegrity also has a customer-facing part of that. So I advise and assist our field and customer teams when it comes to cybersecurity strategy, data security architecture, different areas of how to think about and use data security for a business case within the enterprise, and then also bringing that knowledge back and the requirements of our customers into our product and working with our product and R&D to also integrate the different cybersecurity requirements that our customers have.
All right, fantastic. So as we know more about you guys, your background and what you do at your current company, so let's dive in the topic of in discussing about security and internal threat. So let's discuss first about the holistic security approach. So Rahul and Anthony, could you elaborate on what a holistic security approach means in the context of cybersecurity? Because perhaps Rahul, please go ahead first, as last time.
I think I would say that, purely from this one perspective, Anthony is a lot more qualified to answer that question given his the extent of experience. But the way I kind of think about a holistic approach is really it is about technology, people, processes, bringing all of that together to create what we call as overarching cybersecurity strategy, right? And one of the things that really lost in all of this is how do we really think about it organizationally, right? So I think for me, one of the things is the holistic piece starts very much at the top, right? At the board level, at the leadership level. And it's a mindset that really needs to proliferate all through the organization, right? It's not just like the CISO's job to worry about security, right? Every employee, every person in the organization needs to have security top of mind. And how does that happen? When that vision is really clearly established at the top and it's reinforced every single day, every single hour, every single minute, and people have that as top of mind, right? So when you truly think about holistic strategy approach, like it, our organization should become a very prime focus. So it really starts at that place, and then, like I said, it flows down into everything that you do, be it your technology, be it your processes, be it your people. Security is embedded in every aspect of or your day-to-day. So I want to pause there, like, Anthony,
Anthony,
your
please
thoughts on that.
give
Yeah,
your
actually,
opinion on this.
and I completely agree there. I think and I'm probably not going to add anything new, but another way to look at that is I almost view that as the entire user experience when it comes to cybersecurity. And so, if you look at cybersecurity from the lens of a user experience, what you're trying to do is make that a very seamless, frictionless, integrated experience within an organization. And then, and so that then becomes, so how do you do that? And I absolutely agree with the approach in, there's a top-down view where you've got sort of, culture and governance and policy. And then you've got a bottom-up where when we talk about holistic is really an inclusive, by design, embedded kind of principle within an organization. And I think when you think about holistic as an overall experience and both from the top and the bottom, I think then you start to really get some value and some great wins.
Mhm. And do you have any, can you share any examples or success stories of, without naming the names of organizations implementing these holistic security approaches effectively?
I think I can. I can probably offer a couple of personal experiences, though. I think in one way I've actually seen this done quite effectively is a traditional way to maybe educate the bottom up of your organization in terms of cybersecurity might be required training or sign off of policy. But I think what's a better user experience and where you get a more holistic approach to it is actually when you create an integrated experience. And so perhaps you've in some way integrated the education into my daily experience. And so you may train and validate me, but then you might also test me in ways in which I do my work, where I might have to think about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And then you can reward me if I do things that contribute to the culture that we want to see. And then you can even gamify that in terms of sort of making it something more fun. And I think the integration of that overall experience when we talk about cybersecurity, and this is abstract of the tool, right? Because we can think about cybersecurity and all the different functions that it is and all the different tools that it is. But if we want to talk about holistic approaches and insider threats and things like this, I think we need to talk about the user experience.
Mm-hmm. So maybe for Rahul, question: how about the security culture in the organization? So how can organizations integrate diverse backgrounds and cybersecurity awareness to foster resilient security cultures?
Well, so it starts with, how we define diversity, right? To me, that in itself, when you say diverse backgrounds, it's it means a lot of things, right? It's to me, it means functional diversity, right? Like you like to start one aspect of it is, hey, like it's the engineering organization, it's the go-to-market organization, the product organization. So how do you bring their the different perspectives from that aspect of it? And then there's also diversity in terms of people, like there's different aspects of diversity that you really need to be thinking about, right? To get all of that embedded into an organization cybersecurity posture. But I think the biggest part of it is I think we spoke about this, is this cultivating the security uh, culture where employees feel responsible for, really looking at, oh, maybe this doesn't seem right, right? So really bringing these different perspectives and as Anthony was talking about, right, the gamification, like how do different people actually react to some sort of simulated exercises, which is automatically embedded into this, right? So really thinking about how you create that awareness, create this across, functionally during different levels, getting in different perspectives of people to create that security culture, creating those simulation exercises to drive awareness on a regular basis throughout the organization. That's kind of the way I think about, how do you integrate diversity into this, uh, you know, building out a cybersecurity culture.
Awesome.
And it's almost, just to add to that, it's almost like from an organizational standpoint, find your champions, and you want your champions to be distributed outside of security, because if all of your cybersecurity champions are within security, you will only get that one lens. And so being able to get those outside is very critical to that.
Yeah, this is a great point. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Let's
I
discuss.
think that.
No,
Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
Go.
I think that's a great point, Anthony. I really like that, right? Like the really the the functionally, like I said, like organizations still tend to operate in silos, especially as you start growing, right? Bigger and bigger as you scale up, like that community tends to be there. So you really need to have, like Anthony mentioned, the security champion sitting like outside, like in all of those silos of those organizations to weave that security fabric together. So that's a very, very important aspect of it, right? Having those champions outside, and especially I do see that um really when you become, like when you go from 500 to 1,000 to 5,000 to 10,000 employees, the problem becomes very acute, right? So you want to make sure that you do have enough coverage, and that, like, it's like that pyramid that you need to build out to make sure that there's, like, you're spreading out as employees. There are security champions everywhere, so have some ratio to, I don't know if there's a magic number, but one security champion for every 100 employees or 50 employees would be good to really understand that.
Mhm. All right. So let's dive into our main topic of mitigating insider risk. So my question: insider threats pose a significant risk, of course, to organization. And what are some common strategies for identifying and preventing these risks? So please, Anthony, please go ahead first.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, this has been traditionally the sort of thorn in cybersecurity side, because what this represents is actually the trusted path. So cybersecurity is built on this foundation of trying to authorize and trust a particular path based on some contextual data. And what this represents is you've actually gone through that exercise and you now have established trust. And that's the most dangerous area to be in. So I think in here, what we have to look at are, and this is going to get a little bit deeper now, but modeling of behaviors, baselines of behaviors. So this is no longer about validating and authorizing context with which we maybe authenticate or trust. This is about establishing what we expect to see and then being able to validate when we see things that are unexpected. And that's a difficult problem. And things like, significant false positives and new behaviors that are actually benign are things that really make this a difficult problem.
Mm-hmm. Rahul, do you have? Can
Yeah,
add something?
I think I completely agree. I think it's the what do you call as how do you really plan for the surprises you don't expect, right? It's
Yeah.
uh there are companies which do, like, was that Tesla that was there about a year back in the news, where two disgruntled employees went and exposed a bunch of documents. And you just really, I think there's some way to, yes, there is, I, I think there's a multi-layered approach, right? So the first piece is constantly having, so first having this, a baseline, right? Like enterprise risk-wide assessments, like where are we with this, right? So make sure that you actually baseline what's going on, right? Uh, and you are constantly checking, doing those risk assessments on a regular basis, right? So these are things that you can possibly do to identify. Then, enforcing the policies and controls, right? Really looking at, like, okay, is this happening? Is this happening on a regular basis? What are the things? The behavioral monitoring, I think that's definitely the user activity monitoring. Like, can you actually track user activity within systems? Are there unusual patterns, like, oh, something's off out here, right? And this is where I do think that AI starts coming into play more and more into this is, can we actually, really with all the data that we have, all the logs that we have, can we start using that to feed in and detect unusual activity and boom, like notify someone out there, right? So doing the, having the behavior monitoring, access control, like, again, goes back to security awareness training, like that's things that you keep doing, and also the community of users, like, if somebody else sees that, that's unusual, like I need to really make sure that this is this doesn't sound right? So these are a bunch of things that companies can do, but it does not always prevent bad stuff from happening. I know you had asked an earlier question, Boris, is like, oh, do you know, like, someone who does it really well? I think everybody really does it well till something bad happens, right? So I think it's, again, it just goes down to a lot of, it's a multifaceted, multi-layered approach to do this. Uh, it's and this is something where I do have a lot of hope that AI is going to help us solve some of these problems, right? Like especially the vast amount of data and this unusual pattern that just say that, huh, there's something off out here, right? So with all the activity log that we have, that this is where I do believe that we can get some use cases to detect some unusual patterns and immediately take action based on that.
There is also, just to highlight a viewpoint that we all have, but there is a secondary view to this, and this is actually something specific and very much what Protegrity and what I have been involved in terms of data protection and security, and that is, if we recognize obviously that this is a hard problem, the best way to start solving a hard problem is to reduce the question or area with which you have to solve. And so probably one of the first things to do from an insider threat perspective is to reduce that trust that I talked about, those tags. And that can be done with like data segmentation. That can be done with things like data pseudonymization, sometimes or otherwise de-identification, which is essentially, instead of trusting your technology controls to protect what you don't want people to see, you actually can transform the data so that you spend 99 well sorry so that you spend 1% of the time enabling the data that you want people to see, and the rest of the 99% of the time is really, I don't want to say you don't need effective controls at that point, but your risk has been mitigated tremendously. And the case in point being that if I collect something like, let's say for argument's sake, a social security number in the US or a tax ID, national ID, or a driver's license number, passport number, we spend, we land this data in the clear, and we spend all of this time and all of this money protecting an organization from actually accessing it, third parties from accessing it, threat actors from accessing it, when actually, if the natural consumption of that data should actually not be in the clear, then I would argue that we should be landing that data in a protected form, tokenized or crypto, in some way, in its natural state, and let 99%, and then that way 99% of the access to it is so far less risk, and worry about the 1%. You can do data segmentation and different architectures that play off of that, but really it's about inverting that sort of insider threat. And there's, I'm leaning on like zero trust principles and data transformation principles, but I mean that's really at the heart, I think, of moving a cybersecurity strategy. It also plugs into kind of what we talked about on the holistic side.
So, this is really interesting. I completely agree with you, Andy. I just want to also kind of, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and Boris, sorry, this one, like, I know this is your area of expertise, right? Like, what is preventing, organizations from actually doing more of that? Because that is how it should be, like what you said, right? Like that's what it should be, tokenize the data, right? Like why why give access, or why put it in a position of risk in the first place and then spend
Yeah.
the effort to protect it?
And honestly, I'll answer that in two ways. One is really education. People are so ingrained about thinking about a traditional way to treat data. If you go back to when we were looking to protect against hard drives being pulled out of a data center with transparent-based protection, like that methodology has continued through, but the technology has exploded. The digital age has exploded. So there's
Yeah.
really just an education aspect in one. And then two, what I do see happen as well is when you start to think in this way, there is a propensity to overdo it. So you have to be careful about the consumption equation in how you segment the environment, how you transform the data, understanding what the natural state of the data should be. And if you keep a good eye on that and you have the education, then I actually agree with you. And as a consumer, I expect and I will expect more companies to think about it in this way, because if most of the organization in the world should not see particularly sensitive data about me, then nobody should be landing that particularly sensitive data in the clear.
Mhm. So you discussed some top measures that can prevent this, like zero trust. But what are some other emerging security trends related to insider threats that organizations can adopt, or what are some prevention techniques that you can share with us that people can introduce in their organizations?
I think for myself, again, I think zero trust is an overloaded term, but what I call in there is more like data segmentation and reducing your attack surface in terms of transforming the data. All of this relies on a technology or a set of technologies that are privacy enhancing technologies like pseudonymization, anonymization, de-identification, and different techniques that go along with that. So I think organizations have to start thinking more forward and
Yep.
less traditional as we look at some of this new technology that we're integrating.
Yep.
Rahul?
Yeah, 100% agree. Data, like starting with encryption of sensitive data, classifying the data based on sensitivity, who has, what are the access controls that you have in place for that? Activity logging, right? How do you maintain detailed logs of user activity? Who access the data? Like if there's some anomalous behavior, how do you kind of lock things down? So doing that, doing the regular security audits, right? These are restricted access. There's a number of things that you do from, to mitigate those insider risks. I think that, like I said, again, like the biggest part of it is more and more can we start uh, like would be really good to have a baseline level of all of this established, and when there is deviation from that mean behavior, like immediate notification or something that happened, that's something that I'd like to see more and more of going forward from preventing insider threats perspective.
Mm, Fantastic. So let's, when we wrap up our discussions, could you guys provide some key takeaways for our listeners or viewers on fostering holistic security practices and mitigating insider risk? No, Anthony, please go ahead.
I think for me, when we think holistic, and I go back to Rahul's original, there is there's a top-down culture, and that starts with governance and policy. There's probably the middle layer where I agree there's baselines and security controls, and then for sure I think, and probably what is somewhat missing in the holistic approach, is this bottom up end user experience. I think we need to improve the end user experience in cybersecurity as a whole. And then for insider threat, for me, it is absolutely about understanding consumption patterns, It is about transforming data so that you can invert what should have been an inverted problem to begin with, reduce your attack surface, reduce your risk, and then focus the baselines and the monitoring and the core on where you actually might have exposure, which could be a much, much smaller fraction of your organization than if you try to protect all of your organization from something that shouldn't have otherwise been in the clear anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Rahul,
mean, that's really, really well put. Again, I think uh, cannot emphasize how much of this is really an organizational mindset, right? And again, top down. I'm a big believer in that, right? Like when it comes, like if you know the leadership sets a priority, that security is a priority, and not just in words but in actions, like everything that you do, the embedded user experience that Anthony is talking about, it really is, that is the key to making this happen. You know, the other part, as I was thinking about this, is we talk about training awareness, this simulated exercises, right? Like it's a simple example, like, oh, we do fire drills, right? Like, you know, we have these fire drills that that's happening. That we should have these simulated. A lot of organizations are doing this more and more, right? But can we actually increase the frequency of these things? Like, you know, like oh, okay, the first time a phishing attack happened, right? Like, hey, like, you know, attackers are becoming more sophisticated, right? The first time it happened, like, you know, people fell for it. Second time they fell for it. Like now there's more and more awareness. Like people say, oh, this text message doesn't sound right, right? So how do we kind of like when the first you know, appearance of an incident happens, how as a community like this like, hey, this is an attack, and let's how do we kind of spread that awareness across different organizations, right? And make sure that we use that to simulate these exercises, so that also becomes part of that user experience that
Yeah.
we need to kind of figure out how to make it on a deliver that in a consistent way, so people, it becomes top of mind. Oops, yep, I'm not going to fall for this.
Yes,
All
I
right.
agree.
Thank you, guys, for and Anthony, for your valuable insights and participating in our podcast episode. And I would like to encourage our listeners to subscribe to our podcast for more discussions on cybersecurity and risk management. And I hope we will meet you guys in the future in other discussions. Thanks again.
Agree.
Great,
Same.
great.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting us, and nice meeting you, Anthony.
You as well, Rahul. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.